Welcome to Monk's Moon Temple. There exists a space within you that life's turbulence cannot touch. A silence beneath the noise of worry. A steadiness that does not sway when everything else does. This space is not a secret. It is not hidden. It is the very essence of a wisdom tradition that has held humanity through centuries of change, loss, and uncertainty. These are not promises of a problem-free life. They are instructions for meeting life with a heart that cannot be shattered. They are practices for turning the very ground of your suffering into the ground of your freedom. This is the path of insight, of clear seeing. And today, we are not merely discussing ideas, we are creating the conditions for you to remember something you have always known, but may have forgotten. For the next hours, we step away from the frantic search for external fixes. We move past the illusion that peace is something to be found out there. Instead, we turn inward. We will explore 10 pillars of understanding, drawn from the heart of Buddhist wisdom, that serve not as a temporary shelter, but as a permanent inner home. A refuge you carry within your own awareness. So settle in. Let go of the need to achieve or understand everything at once. Simply listen. Let the words resonate where they will. There is nowhere you need to be but here, and nothing you need to do but breathe. This is your time. This is your sanctuary. Let's begin. Have you ever noticed how grief can feel like it will last forever? How, in the very darkest moments, you can't even picture the sun rising again? Or maybe you've known the opposite feeling. A moment so perfectly beautiful you wished you could freeze time, to make it stay exactly as it is, forever. We all do this. We treat our experiences as if they are permanent. When we're in pain, we believe this is how it will always be. When we're joyful, we cling tightly, terrified it will slip through our fingers. But there is a fundamental truth, taught by the Buddha 2,500 years ago, that changes everything once you truly let it in. Everything that arises will also pass away. This is one of the most powerful teachings in all of Buddhism, and paradoxically, one of the most easily forgotten in the chaos of daily life. Every single thing that enters your life, an emotion, a situation, a loss, a joy, a mental storm, is impermanent. Nothing lasts forever. Not the pain, not the euphoria, not the darkest night, not the brightest morning. Life is movement. It is like water, flowing, transforming, never still. And suffering appears precisely when we try to make the water stop moving, when we try to hold the river in our hands. Think about it. When you're going through something difficult, a heartbreak, an internal crisis, a deep loss, the teaching of impermanence isn't meant to minimize your pain. It's not saying, just get over it, or don't feel sad. That would be cruel and untrue. What this teaching offers is something different, something more profound. It reminds you that you are not your pain. You are experiencing something that is temporary, even though right now it feels eternal, feels solid, feels like the whole world. We often resist this truth because accepting it can feel like giving up control. If everything changes, then nothing is secure. Nothing is guaranteed. And that idea terrifies us. So, we hold on. We clench our fists around what we love, trying with all our might to keep it from leaving. We push away with all our strength what hurts, trying to make it disappear faster. But neither strategy works. The nature of reality is change. Constant, gentle, sometimes fierce, but always present change. Every single thing you see, touch, feel, or think is in motion. Your body is changing. Right now, as you listen, cells are dying and being born. Your thoughts are changing, one moment here, the next moment gone. The people you love are changing. You are changing. And here is what is truly beautiful about this realization. Once you stop fighting impermanence and start understanding it, welcoming it even, something fundamental shifts inside you. You begin to see that this constant change isn't a curse. It is the very doorway to your freedom. Let me tell you a story. There was once a young monk who lived in a monastery high in the mountains. His teacher, an elderly master with eyes that held decades of silence and weathered hands that spoke of gentle work, had given him a ceramic cup many years before. It was a simple cup, unglazed clay, rough to the touch, the color of earth after a soft rain. But to the young monk, it was beyond precious. His teacher had shaped it with his own hands and presented it to him on the very day he took his vows. Every morning, the monk would use this cup for his tea. He would hold it with such care, wash it gently, and place it on a special shelf where the morning light would touch it first. He loved that cup deeply. One autumn morning, as golden leaves drifted past the wooden window frames, the monk was carrying his tea across the floor of the meditation hall. His foot caught on the edge of a worn meditation mat. Time seemed to slow. He watched, helpless, as the cup slipped from his hands, turned once in the air, and shattered against the stone floor. Pieces scattered everywhere, some large, some no bigger than grains of sand. The tea pooled dark against the gray stone. The monk stood frozen, staring at the fragments. His eyes filled with tears. He knelt and carefully gathered every piece he could find, cradling them in the folds of his robe, and went to find his teacher. The old master was sitting by a window, watching the leaves fall in silence. The monk knelt before him, opened his robe, and let the broken pieces spill out onto the floor between them. "Master," he said, his voice breaking. "It's gone. The cup you gave me. I've broken what I loved most." The teacher looked at the shattered clay for a long, quiet moment. Then he looked at his student, his gaze filled with an infinite gentleness. "Tell me," the master said softly, "did you love the cup, or did you love the illusion that it would always be there?" The monk opened his mouth to answer, then closed it. The question settled into him like a stone dropping into a deep, still pond. The master continued, his voice quiet but clear as a mountain stream. "From the very moment I shaped that clay on the wheel, it was already broken. Everything that comes into form is already moving toward formlessness. The cup was never permanent. Your love for it was real, beautiful. But your belief that it would always exist, unchanged, forever. That was the illusion. And that illusion is what is breaking your heart right now, not the cup itself." The monk sat very, very still. "Everything breaks, eventually," the teacher said. "Clay returns to earth. Bodies return to dust. Moments dissolve into memory. This is not a tragedy. It is simply the nature of existence. When you understand this deeply, not just in your head but in your bones, you can love without terror. You can hold without grasping. You can let go without bitterness. The old master smiled then, a warm, knowing smile. He picked up one of the larger fragments of clay and turned it in the light. You know what this broken cup is teaching you? He asked. That everything you love is precious precisely because it will not last forever. So love it now. Love it fully. And when it changes, because it will, let that love transform, too. The young monk looked down at the scattered pieces, and for the first time, he saw them differently. Not as a tragedy, but as a truth. Not as an end, but as a teaching carved in clay. This story holds one of Buddhism's deepest insights. The Buddha taught that all conditioned things, meaning everything that comes into existence through causes and conditions, are impermanent. In the ancient language of Pali, the word is anicca. It is one of the three marks of existence, the fundamental characteristics of all life. He didn't teach this to make us sad or nihilistic. He taught it to free us from suffering. Because when you deeply, truly understand that everything changes, you stop demanding that life be different than it is. You stop exhausting yourself in the impossible task of trying to make temporary things permanent. You stop living in the constant, low-grade fear of loss. Instead, you learn to be present with what is, while it is. This is what liberation looks like in the Buddhist sense. Not an escape from change, but a profound peace found within its very flow. So, how do you work with this teaching in your actual, daily life? Start by watching your emotions like you'd watch weather passing through the vast sky. When anger arises, notice it. Don't push it away. Don't judge yourself for feeling it. But also, don't believe it will last forever. You can say to yourself softly, this is anger. And it is changing. When sadness comes, let it be there. Feel it fully, but hold it lightly. This is sadness. And it is changing. Practice this even with joy, especially with joy. When something wonderful happens, be fully present for it. Don't cloud the experience by worrying about when it will end. Instead, let yourself think, this is beautiful. And I am here for it now, knowing it, too, will change. There's a simple phrase that has helped countless people navigate difficult times. 4 words, this, too, is changing. Not, this too shall pass, which can sometimes feel dismissive, but, this, too, is changing. It's gentler, more accurate, because nothing just passes and disappears completely. Everything transforms into something else. Your grief will change, into a different shade of grief, then into memory, then perhaps into a thread of wisdom woven into your being. Your anxiety will change, into calm, then into other feelings, then into a deeper understanding of your own mind. Nothing stays the same. And here is the paradox that makes this teaching so profoundly freeing: impermanence is not a punishment. It is a blessing. It means that this moment, right now, the one you are living as you hear these words, is completely, utterly unique. It will never happen again in exactly this way. The sound of your breath in this instant is unrepeatable. The way the light falls where you are is singular. This present moment is both perfectly ordinary and absolutely sacred, precisely because it is temporary. When the Buddha taught about impermanence, he wasn't being pessimistic. He was pointing toward a deeper, more authentic way of living. If you truly understand that everything changes, you naturally start to notice what does not change. The awareness that watches it all. The stillness beneath the movement. The peace that exists regardless of the conditions swirling around it. So, take a moment now. Just breathe. Think of something you are holding on to right now. Maybe it's an emotion you can't seem to release. Maybe a situation you are fiercely resisting. Maybe it's an old version of yourself you're trying to keep alive, even though you've already changed. Ask yourself, gently, what would it feel like to simply acknowledge that this is already changing? Not to force it to change, not to push it away, but just to recognize its inherently temporary nature. And here is the thing about this teaching, it applies to everything. Your hardest moment right now is changing. Your deepest wound is changing. Your very identity is changing. Even your understanding of these words is changing as you hear them. The Buddhist path invites you to do something that can feel counterintuitive, to traverse your pain rather than escape from it. To feel it rather than numb it. To observe it rather than become it. Because when you stop resisting what is, and start being present with it, knowing it will change, you discover a freedom that no circumstance can ever touch. Every time life becomes difficult, remember this teaching like a gentle friend whispering the truth in your ear, this is changing. And every time you experience something beautiful, remember it, too, this is changing. So I am going to be fully, completely present for it right now. That is how the truth of impermanence becomes wisdom instead of sorrow. And this brings us naturally to our next question. If everything changes, why do we suffer so intensely when things do? Why does change so often feel like pure loss? The answer lies in the next teaching, one that goes even deeper into the very heart of human suffering. Because the pain doesn't come from change itself. It comes from how tightly we hold on, trying with all our might to stop the river from flowing. Think of someone you love dearly, or something you treasure. Now, imagine losing it. Feel what happens in your body when you imagine that loss. The tightness in your chest, the fear that rises in your throat, the thought, I could not live without this. We have all been there. That moment when we realize, with a shock, how tightly we are holding on to a person, a job, a dream, a version of ourselves, an idea of how life should be. And the tighter we hold, the more it hurts when life, in its natural flow, begins to pull it from our grasp. This brings us to one of the most challenging and ultimately liberating teachings in Buddhism. The Buddha said that suffering does not come primarily from what happens to us. It comes from how we hold on to things, how we resist their changing, how we demand that life conform to our personal expectations. In other words, we don't suffer because we lose something. We suffer because we insisted, often unconsciously, that it should stay forever. This is a pillar of Buddhist understanding, and it might be one of the hardest truths to accept, because it confronts us directly with the root of our own pain. The Buddha taught that suffering, what he called dukkha, arises from tanha, which means craving or thirst, and upadana, which means clinging or grasping. Let's be very clear about what this means. It is not saying you should not care about things. It is not saying you should not love people deeply. That would be a cold, inhuman teaching, and Buddhism is not that. What it is saying is something more subtle, more nuanced, and more profound. There is a critical difference between loving and clinging. Love is open. Love says, I care for you deeply, and I want you to be free and happy, even if that freedom or happiness takes a form I didn't expect. Love is present. Love appreciates what is here now without demanding it stay forever in the same shape. Clinging, on the other hand, is born from fear. Fear of loss, fear of emptiness, fear of change, fear of being without the thing or person we believe we need in order to be whole, to be okay. Clinging says, you must stay exactly as you are, because I have built my sense of safety around you. Clinging whispers, if this changes, I will not survive. And here is what happens when we live from that place of clinging. Every moment becomes tinged with a background anxiety. We cannot fully enjoy what we have because we are terrified of losing it. We try to control people, situations, even our own feelings, desperately attempting to freeze life in a single frame. But life will not freeze. It keeps flowing, changing, moving. And every time it does, we feel as if something essential is being torn from our hands. The teaching isn't that you shouldn't care. The teaching is that clinging does not protect you from loss. It only makes you suffer before the loss even happens. It robs you of the present by mortgaging it to a fearful future. Let me share a story that illuminates this truth. There was a monk, young and earnest, devoted to his practice. He lived in a small monastery nestled in a misty valley where fog gathered each morning like a silent blessing. His teacher was a woman known throughout the region for her quiet wisdom. She owned almost nothing, spoke rarely, and lived with profound simplicity. One year, on the anniversary of the monk taking his vows, his teacher gave him a gift. It was a bowl, a begging bowl made of dark wood, smooth as a river stone, light as a whisper in his hands. The teacher had carved it herself over many months, and into the bottom, she had etched a single, perfect lotus flower. Use this for your practice, she told him. Let it remind you why you are here. The monk treasured that bowl. Each morning, he would carry it through the village, receiving offerings of rice and vegetables from people who respected the monastery. Each evening, he would clean it with great care, running his fingers over the carved lotus, feeling the smooth petals under his touch. The bowl became, to him, more than an object. It was his tangible connection to his teacher, proof of his commitment, a sacred trust made physical. Years passed. The bowl aged beautifully, its wood darkening with time and use, taking on a deep, warm luster. Then, one winter morning, as the monk was crossing a wooden bridge over the stream behind the monastery, his sandal caught on a loose board. He stumbled. The bowl flew from his hands. He watched, as if in slow motion, as it arced through the cold air and disappeared into the rushing, swollen water below. The stream was high from recent rains, moving fast and dark. The bowl was gone in an instant, swept downstream toward the river, toward the sea, toward places he would never see. The monk stood on the bridge, frozen. Then he fell to his knees and wept. He wept not just that day, but for days after. He couldn't eat. He couldn't sit in meditation. He felt as though he had lost something irreplaceable, as if a part of his very self had been swept away with that wooden bowl. His teacher noticed, of course. She watched him move through the monastery like a ghost, his eyes distant, his practice hollow. Finally, one evening at sunset, she asked him to walk with her in the bare winter garden. They walked in silence for a while, their feet crunching softly on the gravel path. Then the teacher stopped beside a cherry tree, its branches skeletal against the fading light. "Tell me," she said gently, "what have you lost?" "The bowl you gave me," the monk said, his voice breaking. "The one you made with your own hands. It's gone. Forever." "I see," the teacher said. She looked up at the bare branches. "And what did that bowl mean to you?" "Everything," he whispered. "It meant I was worthy. It meant you believed in me. It meant I belonged here, that I was a true monk." The teacher turned to him then, and her eyes were infinitely kind. "My dear student," she said, "you never needed that bowl to be worthy. You do not need any object to prove you belong. What you are grieving is not the bowl. It is the illusion that your value, your identity, depended on possessing it." The monk looked at her, tears streaming down his face. "I carved that bowl with love," the teacher continued. "And I gave it to you with love. But I never gave you your worthiness. You already had that. The bowl was just a bowl. Beautiful, yes. Useful, yes. A good companion for your walks. But in the end, just a piece of wood that came from a tree and will eventually return to the earth, one way or another." She touched his shoulder gently. "You transformed that bowl into something else in your mind. Into proof. Into security. Into identity. And then, when the bowl did what all physical things do, changed, moved, disappeared, you felt as if you were losing yourself. But you are still here. You are still whole. Nothing essential has been lost." The monk treasured that bowl. Each morning, he would carry it through the village, receiving offerings of rice and vegetables from people who respected the monastery. Each evening, he would clean it with great care, running his fingers over the carved lotus, feeling the smooth petals under his touch. The bowl became, to him, more than an object. It was his tangible connection to his teacher, proof of his commitment, a sacred trust made physical. Years passed. The bowl aged beautifully, its wood darkening with time and use, taking on a deep, warm luster. Then, one winter morning, as the monk was crossing a wooden bridge over the stream behind the monastery, his sandal caught on a loose board. He stumbled. The bowl flew from his hands. He watched, as if in slow motion, as it arced through the cold air and disappeared into the rushing, swollen water below. The stream was high from recent rains, moving fast and dark. The bowl was gone in an instant, swept downstream toward the river, toward the sea, toward places he would never see. The monk stood on the bridge, frozen. Then he fell to his knees and wept. He wept not just that day, but for days after. He couldn't eat. He couldn't sit in meditation. He felt as though he had lost something irreplaceable, as if a part of his very self had been swept away with that wooden bowl. His teacher noticed, of course. She watched him move through the monastery like a ghost, his eyes distant, his practice hollow. Finally, one evening at sunset, she asked him to walk with her in the bare winter garden. They walked in silence for a while, their feet crunching softly on the gravel path. Then the teacher stopped beside a cherry tree, its branches skeletal against the fading light. "Tell me," she said gently, "what have you lost?" "The bowl you gave me," the monk said, his voice breaking. "The one you made with your own hands. It's gone. Forever." "I see," the teacher said. She looked up at the bare branches. "And what did that bowl mean to you?" "Everything," he whispered. "It meant I was worthy. It meant you believed in me. It meant I belonged here, that I was a true monk." The teacher turned to him then, and her eyes were infinitely kind. "My dear student," she said, "you never needed that bowl to be worthy. You do not need any object to prove you belong. What you are grieving is not the bowl. It is the illusion that your value, your identity, depended on possessing it." The monk looked at her, tears streaming down his face. "I carved that bowl with love," the teacher continued. "And I gave it to you with love. But I never gave you your worthiness. You already had that. The bowl was just a bowl. Beautiful, yes. Useful, yes. A good companion for your walks. But in the end, just a piece of wood that came from a tree and will eventually return to the earth, one way or another." She touched his shoulder gently. "You transformed that bowl into something else in your mind. Into proof. Into security. Into identity. And then, when the bowl did what all physical things do, changed, moved, disappeared, you felt as if you were losing yourself. But you are still here. You are still whole. Nothing essential has been lost." The monk stood very still, letting her words sink in like water into dry earth. "This is what attachment does," the teacher said softly. "It takes our love, our care, our appreciation, all beautiful, natural things, and it adds fear to them. It says, I must keep this forever, or I will be destroyed. And that fear poisons every moment. It turns love into desperation. It turns appreciation into anxiety." She paused, looking again at the bare tree. "In spring, this tree will bloom. The blossoms will be exquisite, fragile, breathtaking. And then, they will fall. If I clung to each petal, demanding it stay on the branch, I would suffer endlessly. But if I appreciate the blossoms while they are here, knowing they will fall, I can experience their beauty fully, perhaps even more fully, because I know they are temporary gifts. I am not waiting for them to leave, I am present for them while they exist." The monk looked up at the branches, seeing them with new eyes. "Can you love without clinging?" the teacher asked. "Can you appreciate without demanding? Can you hold something precious with an open hand? These questions go to the very heart of Buddhist practice. The Buddha taught that the root of suffering is this very clinging, this tanha that never feels satisfied. We crave pleasant experiences and cling to them when they come, trying to make them last. We crave to avoid unpleasant experiences, clinging to the hope that we can control what we feel. We even cling to our own sense of a fixed, permanent self, terrified of changing, aging, becoming someone we do not recognize. And all of this clinging creates dukkha, suffering, unsatisfactoriness, a constant, underlying hum of anxiety that life is not quite right, because it will not stand still for our inspection. The freedom the Buddha pointed to is not about not caring. It is about caring deeply while holding lightly. So, how do you practice this in your actual life? Start by noticing, with curiosity and without judgment, where you are clinging right now. What are you afraid to lose? And I don't mean just physical things. I mean ideas about yourself, relationships, identities, expectations about how your life should look, who you should be. When you notice that clinging, that tight grip of fear in your mind or body, see if you can soften it just a little. Not by forcing yourself not to care, but by remembering the fundamental truth, everything changes. And your clinging cannot stop that. It can only make the changing more painful for you. Practice appreciation instead of grasping. When you are with someone you love, instead of the thought, I cannot lose this person, try the thought, I am so grateful this person is here with me right now. Feel the difference in your body, in your heart. One creates a background of anxiety, the other creates a foreground of presence. When you have something good in your life, a job you enjoy, a place you love, a moment of peace, let yourself appreciate it fully, without immediately jumping to worry about when it will end. The worry does not protect you. It only steals the joy from the now. And here is something important. Practicing non-attachment does not mean you will not feel sadness when things change. You will. You are human. Loss hurts. But there is a profound difference between clean pain and suffering. Clean pain is the natural, honest grief that comes when something ends. It is real, it moves through you, and it eventually transforms. Suffering is what we add on top of that clean pain, the resistance, the "this shouldn't have happened," the clinging to what is already gone, the story that we cannot survive without what we have lost. The Buddhist path invites you to feel the clean pain without adding the extra layer of suffering. To grieve without demanding that life be different than it is. To love without making your inner peace dependent on things staying exactly the same. So, take a moment now. Breathe. Ask yourself, what am I holding too tightly right now? What am I clinging to out of fear? And then, very gently, see if you can imagine holding that same person, situation, or idea with an open hand instead of a closed fist. Not letting go completely in this moment, but holding it lightly, with love instead of with fear. This practice, learning to love without clinging, is one of the most beautiful and difficult aspects of the Buddhist path. It asks you to be vulnerable, to admit you cannot control everything, to trust that you will be okay even when things change. And the freedom it offers is extraordinary. When you stop clinging, you stop suffering before loss even happens. You start experiencing life as it is, not as you desperately need it to be. You discover that you can be open-hearted and protected at the same time, not protected by walls, but by understanding. Which brings us to the next, natural question. If we cannot find lasting peace in external things, and if clinging only creates more suffering, where on earth do we look for stability? The answer might surprise you, because it is closer than you think. Where have you been looking for peace? Maybe in the approval of others, hoping that if enough people validate you, you'll finally feel okay inside. Maybe in success, believing that the next achievement, the next milestone, will bring the calm you're searching for. Maybe in a relationship, thinking that the right person will finally complete you, fill the empty spaces. Maybe in perfect conditions, the right job, the right home, the right set of circumstances. Convinced that when everything aligns externally, you'll finally feel settled internally. We all do this. We look outside ourselves for an inner experience, and we exhaust ourselves in the search. We chase, we strive, we rearrange our external world over and over, convinced that if we just get it right out there, we'll feel right in here. But something strange and telling always happens. Even when we get what we thought we wanted. The approval, the success, the relationship, the perfect circumstances, the peace either doesn't come, or it comes only briefly, like a visitor, and then evaporates, leaving us searching once more, for the next external thing. This brings us to a teaching that, in a world oriented almost entirely outward, feels almost revolutionary. Peace does not come from external conditions. It never has, and it never will. Peace is an inside job. And if you do not cultivate it internally, no external arrangement, no matter how perfect, can deliver it to you. The Buddha taught this with crystal clarity. He said, "Be a lamp unto yourselves. Be your own refuge. Take refuge in yourselves, and look not for refuge in anyone else." The Pali word is Adadipa, be an island unto yourself. This doesn't mean you don't need other people, or that you should isolate yourself in cold self-sufficiency. It means something far deeper. Your fundamental sense of okayness, your basic peace, your inner stability, cannot depend on circumstances that are, by their nature, beyond your ultimate control. Think about it. If your peace depends on your job, what happens when the job changes or ends? If your peace depends on someone loving you a certain way, what happens when that relationship shifts, as all relationships do? If your peace depends on your body looking or feeling a certain way, what happens as your body ages and changes? You become a leaf in the wind, blown about by every change in circumstance, constantly unstable, constantly anxious, constantly seeking the next external fix that will finally make everything okay. External things, jobs, relationships, achievements, possessions, they are all impermanent, as we've seen. Building your peace on them is like building a beautiful house on shifting sand. You can spend your whole life constructing it, decorating it, but it will never feel solid, because the foundation itself is not stable. The Buddhist path asks you to do something radically different, to turn inward. To cultivate peace as an internal practice, not as an external achievement. But how? In a culture that trains us from birth to look outside ourselves for validation, answers, and worth, How do we learn to find this stability within? Let me share a story. There was a disciple who had been practicing for several years. He studied texts diligently, performed rituals carefully, followed every instruction his teacher gave. But despite all his sincere effort, he felt a persistent restlessness, a deep unsettledness, as if something essential was missing. One day, unable to bear the inner agitation any longer, he went to his teacher. "Master," he said, "I have done everything you've asked. I wake early to meditate. I study the sutras. I practice kindness. But I still do not have peace. I still feel this turmoil inside. Where can I find it? Should I travel to the sacred mountains? Should I seek out different teachers? Should I undertake a more severe austerity? Please, tell me where to go, and I will go there immediately." The teacher looked at him for a long, silent moment. Then, without speaking a word, he reached out and gently placed his hand on the disciple's chest, right over his heart. The disciple felt the warmth of the teacher's palm through his robe. "The peace you are seeking," the teacher said quietly, "is not in the sacred mountains. It is not in the ancient texts. It is not in the approval of teachers or the achievement of special states. It is here. Right here, where my hand rests now." The disciple looked confused, troubled. "But I don't feel it there," he admitted. "All I feel is anxiety, longing, confusion." "I know," the teacher replied, his hand still resting gently. "That is because you have never stopped running long enough to notice what else is there. Close your eyes. Don't go anywhere. Don't seek anything. Just be here. Right here." The disciple, trusting his teacher, closed his eyes. He still felt the warm, steady pressure of the hand on his chest. "Now," the teacher said, his voice a soft murmur, "feel your breath. Just the simple, natural movement of air coming in, and air going out. Don't try to breathe in any special way. Don't change it. Just notice what is already happening, by itself." The disciple brought his attention to his breath. At first, his mind immediately scattered, to his plans, his worries, his endless internal list of things he thought he needed to do or be or achieve to finally find peace. "Come back," the teacher said softly. "Just this breath. This moment. Nothing else." Slowly, gradually, as the disciple kept returning his awareness to the simple sensation of breathing, his mind began to settle. The frantic seeking slowed. In and out. In and out. And as he stayed there, not going anywhere in his mind, not trying to fix anything, not striving for any special experience, something subtle yet profound shifted. Beneath the noise of his thoughts, beneath the restlessness and the seeking, he became aware of a stillness. It had been there all along, like the quiet, unmoving depths of the ocean beneath the turbulent surface waves. It wasn't something he created, it was something he discovered by ceasing to run from it. When he opened his eyes, tears were streaming down his face. "It was here," he whispered, his voice full of awe. "The whole time. It was here." "Yes," the teacher said, smiling gently and finally removing his hand. It is always here. You are the peace you have been seeking. But you have to stop running toward it, and start being it. This is what the Buddha meant when he taught that we must be our own refuge. There is a famous discourse where he said, "Therefore, Ananda, be a lamp unto yourselves. Be your own refuge. Hold fast to the Dharma as a lamp, hold fast to the Dharma as a refuge. Seek no other refuge." He wasn't saying, don't learn from teachers, or don't find support in community. He was pointing to something more fundamental. No one else can give you your peace. No external circumstance can deliver it to you permanently. You have to discover it within yourself, cultivate it as a daily practice, and learn to access it regardless of what is happening around you. Your inner space is like a temple. But if you never enter it, if you spend all your time and energy trying to perfect the exterior world, you will never know the sanctuary, the unshakable refuge, that already exists inside you. And here is what is truly beautiful about this teaching: it is not asking you to create something new. The peace, the stillness, the awareness, it is already there. You don't have to manufacture it, earn it, or achieve it. You just have to stop abandoning yourself long enough to notice it. So, how do you practice this? Start by creating what I like to call sacred pauses throughout your day. These are moments, however brief, where you deliberately stop the outward motion and come back to yourself. It can be as simple as closing your eyes for 30 seconds and taking 3 conscious breaths. Just breathing, noticing the air moving in and out, feeling your body alive and present in that moment. When you feel scattered, anxious, or lost, instead of immediately reaching for your phone, a snack, a distraction, or trying to frantically fix something external, pause. Place your hand on your chest, like the teacher in the story, and ask yourself, can I come home, just for this moment? Remember, home isn't a place out there. Home is the awareness that's always here, witnessing everything, unchanging even as everything changes around it. Your breath is your most reliable doorway back to this inner refuge. Not because breathing is magical, but because it is always happening, right now, in this moment, in your body. When you bring your attention fully to your breath, you are automatically bringing yourself into the present moment, into your body, into the only place where peace can actually be found and felt. Try it right now. Just take one full breath, and really feel it. Feel the cool air entering your nostrils, the gentle expansion of your ribs and belly, the soft release as you exhale. Notice how, in this simple moment of awareness, the endless mental chatter quietens, just a little. That quiet, that space, that is a taste of your inner refuge. It's not dramatic. It's not flashy. It's subtle, like the sky behind the clouds. But it is always there, and it is more reliable than any external condition could ever be. Another practice: when you find yourself seeking peace in external validation, waiting for someone to tell you you're good enough, you're doing well, you're okay, notice that seeking. See the hunger in it. Then, turn inward. Say to yourself, I can validate my own experience. I can witness my own worth. I don't need anyone else's permission to be at peace in this moment. This isn't about becoming cold or arrogant. It's about developing a core stability that doesn't crumble every time external circumstances shift or someone's opinion changes. When you cultivate peace internally, something remarkable happens. You stop being so desperate for external things to be perfect. You can appreciate them when they are good, without depending on them for your fundamental okayness. You can navigate challenges without completely falling apart, because your center of gravity is inside you, not scattered out there in the world of changing conditions. Think about the ocean again. On the surface, there can be storms, huge waves crashing, chaos, turbulence. But deep below, in the profound depths, there is a stillness. The storms do not reach down there. That deep, abiding stillness, that is what lives inside you. The storms of life will come. They always do. But when you know how to sink beneath the surface chatter, beneath the reactive thoughts, into your own depths, you discover that the storms cannot touch your fundamental peace. They can rage on the surface, but you are anchored in the deep. So, take a moment now. Just breathe. Ask yourself, where have I been looking for peace lately? What external thing have I been thinking will finally make me feel okay? And what would it feel like to stop seeking out there, and start cultivating in here? Not as a rejection of the world, but as a way to build a foundation that allows you to engage with the world from a place of stability, not from a place of desperate need. This is what it means to be your own refuge, to carry your peace with you, like an inner lamp, wherever you go. Not because circumstances are perfect, but because you've learned to access the stillness that lives beneath all circumstances. And when you begin to develop this inner refuge, something else beautiful becomes possible. You start to recognize that the way you relate to life, the thoughts you think, the stories you tell yourself, the interpretations you make, shapes your experience far more than the external facts ever could. Which is exactly what our next teaching explores. Pay close attention to how you are speaking to yourself right now, in the quiet privacy of your own mind. What is the conversation happening? Are you criticizing yourself for something you did or didn't do? Are you rehearsing an old resentment, playing it over and over like a scratched record? Are you worrying about the future, playing out scenarios of what might go wrong? Most of us aren't even consciously aware of this constant, internal dialogue. It's there, running like background music we've learned to tune out. And here is what the Buddha understood 2,500 years ago with stunning clarity: these thoughts are not neutral. They are not just passing clouds with no impact. Every thought you think repeatedly is creating a pathway in your mind. Like water running down a hillside, always taking the same route, it eventually carves a channel that becomes deeper and deeper over time, until it becomes the default course for your mental energy. Think about it this way. If you habitually think, "I'm not good enough," that thought doesn't just come and go innocently. Each time you repeat it, you are strengthening that neural pathway, making it easier and more automatic for that thought to arise the next time, until eventually it becomes your mind's well-worn default setting, the lens through which you see yourself, your abilities, and your life. This is what the Buddha was pointing to when he taught about mind cultivation, or bhavana in Pali. Your mind is like a garden. And you are its gardener. But here is the crucial part. If you do not tend it consciously, it will not stay empty and pristine. It will grow whatever seeds happen to blow in on the wind, weeds of worry, thorns of resentment, tangled vines of fear. The Buddhist understanding of this is very specific, and it's important we get it right, because this teaching is often misunderstood in modern spiritual culture. The Buddha taught about karma, but not in the simplistic way most people think. Karma is not some cosmic force that rewards good people and punishes bad ones. Karma simply means action and its consequences. And mental actions, your thoughts, your intentions, your habitual ways of interpreting experience, these create karma just as surely as physical actions do. But here is what it does not mean. It does not mean that if you think positive thoughts, the universe will magically deliver positive outcomes to your doorstep. It does not mean you can manifest your exact reality through visualization or affirmations alone. That is modern manifestation culture, and it is very different from the Buddhist understanding. What the Buddha actually taught is this: the way you train your mind determines the kind of person you become. And the kind of person you become determines how you experience your life. Let me say that again, because it is essential. Training your mind does not magically change external reality. It changes your relationship to reality. And changing that relationship changes everything about how you move through the world. A mind trained in anger and suspicion will experience a profoundly different life than a mind trained in compassion and curiosity. Not because the external circumstances are necessarily different, but because the person experiencing those circumstances is different. Their perception, their reaction, their very being is different. There is an old story that illustrates this perfectly. There was a disciple who complained constantly. Nothing was ever right. The weather was too hot or too cold. The food was too bland or too rich. His fellow practitioners were too noisy or too distant. His teacher was too demanding. The practice was too difficult. His meditation cushion was too hard. The list was endless. One morning, after listening to yet another litany of complaints, the teacher invited the disciple to walk with him in the monastery garden. It was early spring, and the garden was just beginning to stir with green life after the winter. They walked in silence until they reached a patch of earth that had been freshly turned, dark and rich, ready for planting. The teacher knelt down, scooped up a handful of the soil, and let it run through his fingers slowly. Then he looked up at his student. "Tell me," he said, "what do you see when you look at this garden?" The disciple glanced around, his critical eye immediately active. "I see that the fence over there needs repair," he said. "And those plants near the wall are dying. Someone has left tools scattered on the path. It's rather messy." The teacher nodded slowly. "Now," he said, holding up the soil in his hand, "look at this. What could grow here?" "Anything, I suppose," the disciple said, not understanding the point. "The soil looks fertile." "Exactly," the teacher replied. "This soil does not judge what we plant in it. It is neutral. If we plant weed seeds, it will grow weeds, lush and strong. If we plant flower seeds, it will grow flowers, beautiful and fragrant. The soil simply nourishes whatever seeds we give it." He stood up, brushing the dirt from his hands. "Your mind," he said gently, "is like this soil. Every thought you think is a seed. Every complaint, every criticism, every anxious worry, every judgment, these are all seeds you are planting in the garden of your mind. And your mind, like this soil, does not judge. It simply grows whatever you plant. You have been planting seeds of dissatisfaction, of noticing what's wrong, for so long, that now your entire inner landscape is overgrown with it. And then you wonder why you cannot find any peace, why everything feels wrong, why life is so unsatisfactory. It is not that your life is uniquely wrong. It is that you have cultivated a mind that sees wrongness everywhere. The disciple stood very still, the truth of the words beginning to dawn on him. "But, what can I do?" he asked. And for the first time, there was no complaint in his voice, only a sincere, open questioning. "Plant new seeds," the teacher said simply. "Start paying attention to what you are cultivating. When a thought of complaint arises, and it will, notice it. See it clearly. Don't judge yourself for it. Just recognize, a complaining thought. Then, you have a choice. Do I water this seed with my attention? Do I dwell on it? Do I let it grow? Or do I let it wither from lack of attention, and consciously plant something else in its place? Perhaps a seed of gratitude for the food, or a seed of patience with the noise, or a seed of curiosity about the difficult practice. This is the essence of what the Buddha meant when he said, "We are what we think." All that we are arises with our thoughts. With our thoughts, we make the world. He wasn't talking about magical thinking. He was talking about character formation, about the gradual, powerful process by which repeated thoughts become habitual patterns, which become personality traits, which become the very texture of who you are and how you meet your life. A person who habitually thinks suspicious thoughts becomes a suspicious person, and encounters a world that feels threatening. A person who habitually cultivates gratitude becomes a grateful person, and encounters a world filled with gifts, even amidst difficulty. In traditional Buddhism, this is often called guarding the sense doors, or guarding the mind. Just as a gatekeeper at a city entrance decides who to let in and who to turn away, you can develop the capacity to notice what thoughts are arriving at your mind's gate, and choose which ones to admit, to entertain, and which ones to simply acknowledge and let pass on by. This does not mean forcing yourself to think happy thoughts all the time or suppressing difficult emotions. That is spiritual bypassing, and it does not work, it only creates more internal conflict. What it means is developing a clear awareness of your mental habits and consciously, gently choosing to cultivate wholesome states. What Buddhism calls kusala citta. Wholesome mental states are those that lead toward freedom, peace, clarity, and genuine connection, kindness, patience, curiosity, compassion, contentment, clear seeing, generosity. Unwholesome mental states are those that lead toward contraction, suffering, and confusion. Hatred, greed, delusion, jealousy, anxiety, resentment, spite. And here is the key, you develop these wholesome states through practice, through training, through cultivation. This is what meditation, at its core, actually is. Not merely a way to relax or achieve special blissful states, but a training ground for the mind. When you sit in meditation and notice your mind has wandered off into a story of worry, and you gently, without judgment, bring your attention back to the sensation of the breath, you are not just relaxing. You are training your mind. You are strengthening the muscle of awareness. You are weakening the automatic pathway of worry and strengthening the pathway of mindful presence. Do this enough times, with patience and consistency, and it becomes easier. Not because you are controlling your thoughts, but because you are training your mind to operate from a different place, a place of observation rather than blind identification. So, how do you practice this in daily life? Start by simply observing your thought patterns, as a scientist would observe data, without judgment. For one day, try to notice what kinds of thoughts tend to dominate your mental landscape. Are they worried thoughts? Planning thoughts? Critical thoughts, toward yourself or others? Comparative thoughts? Nostalgic thoughts? Just notice. Oh, I'm thinking anxious thoughts about that meeting tomorrow. Interesting. This awareness itself is transformative. You cannot change what you do not see. And most of us are completely unconscious of our habitual thought patterns, running on autopilot. Once you start seeing your patterns with more clarity, you can begin to choose differently. When you notice yourself spiraling into a familiar groove of worry or self-criticism, you can pause. You can ask, is this thought helpful? Is it true? Is it leading me toward peace or toward suffering? If it's not helpful, you don't have to fight it, argue with it, or suppress it. You can simply acknowledge it. Hello, worry. I see you. And then, consciously, gently redirect your attention to something more wholesome. Maybe to your breath. Maybe to a genuine feeling of gratitude for one thing in this moment. Maybe to a wish for your own well-being. May I be free from this anxiety. May I be at peace. This is planting a new seed. One conscious choice at a time. And here is what's important to understand. This practice isn't about achieving some perfect, pristine mental state where you never have a difficult thought again. That is not the goal, and it is not realistic. The goal is to train your mind so that difficult thoughts and emotions do not rule you. They don't define you. They don't trap you in endless cycles of suffering. Think of it like physical fitness. If you train your body, you don't become immune to ever feeling tired or sore. But you develop strength, endurance, and resilience that allow you to move through the world with more ease and capability. It is the same with the mind. You train it not to eliminate all difficulty, but to develop the capacity to meet difficulty with wisdom, with space, with compassion, instead of with immediate, unconscious reactivity. The Buddha said that an untrained mind is our greatest enemy, but a trained mind is our greatest friend. And the training happens right here, in the garden of your daily thoughts, one seed, one choice, one moment of awareness at a time. So, take a moment now. Just breathe and notice. What seeds have you been planting in your mental garden lately? What thoughts do you water with your attention every day? And if you could plant one new seed today, a thought of kindness toward yourself, a moment of pure presence, a seed of peace, what would you choose? This practice of tending your mind with care isn't separate from spiritual awakening. It is spiritual awakening, happening in the ordinary, sacred moments of choosing awareness over automaticity. And as you learn to tend your mind with more wisdom and gentleness, you'll notice something else beginning to shift: your relationship to time itself. Because a mind trained in presence naturally starts to discover where real life is actually happening. And that is exactly what we will explore next. Where are you right now? I don't mean physically. I know you're listening to this in a room, in a car, while walking. I mean, where is your mind? Are you fully here, present with these words, feeling the intention behind them? Or is part of you already thinking about what you need to do later today? Are you replaying something that happened yesterday, turning it over and over, wishing it had gone differently? Are you planning tomorrow, next week, next year, living in a future that hasn't even arrived yet? Here is something startling to consider: most of us spend almost no time actually here, in the present moment. We are physically present, but our minds are everywhere else, trapped in the past, which is only a memory, or anxiously reaching toward a future, which is only imagination. And meanwhile, life, actual, real, tactile life, is passing by, unnoticed, unlived. Imagine this: you are sitting across from someone you love deeply, someone you haven't seen in a long time. They are telling you something important, heartfelt, looking right into your eyes. And you are nodding, saying "MHM," but you are not really there. Your mind is on your phone, on work, on the argument you had that morning, on what you're going to say next. The person is right there. The moment is happening, this unique, irreplaceable moment of connection, but you are missing it. You are lost in thoughts about moments that are not actually occurring. This, the Buddha observed, is a fundamental aspect of the human condition. We live everywhere except where life is actually happening, which is right here, right now, in this present experience. And he taught something radical: this moment. This breath. This exact experience you are having right now, this asterisk is your life. Not the moment you are remembering from the past. Not the moment you are hoping for in the future. This one. This is it. Everything else is a story, a thought, happening in your mind now. Think about the past for a moment. Where is it? It is not actually anywhere, except in your memory, in your thoughts about what happened. Yes, events occurred. That is not in question. But the past itself does not exist anywhere in this present moment except as a mental construct, a story you are telling yourself now. And the future, where is that? It hasn't happened yet. It exists only as imagination, projection, worry, hope, all of which are activities of your mind happening now, in this present moment. The only thing that actually, undeniably exists is now. The Buddha called this awareness sati in Pali, usually translated as mindfulness, though a more literal translation is recollection or remembering. Not remembering the past, but remembering to be present. Remembering to come back to this moment, again and again and again. This teaching of present moment awareness, sati, is so central to the Buddhist path that it is one of the steps of the Noble Eightfold Path itself, called right mindfulness. It is not a side practice or an optional technique. It is considered essential to awakening. Why? Because suffering flourishes when we are not present. When you are lost in thoughts about the past, you suffer with regret, shame, resentment, nostalgia for what's gone. When you are lost in thoughts about the future, you suffer with anxiety, fear, and endless planning to avoid imagined disasters. But in this actual moment, right now, without the added story, are you okay? Not, is your life situation okay? Not, are all your problems solved? But right now, in this breath, in this moment of being alive and aware, are you okay? Usually, when you strip away the stories of past and future, the answer is a simple, quiet yes. In the present moment, without the heavy weight of time, there is just this, breathing, hearing, sensing, being. And that, in itself, is very often enough. There is a sufficiency in pure presence. There is a story I love that captures this teaching perfectly. A student had been practicing meditation for several months. He sat every morning, followed his breath, tried earnestly to quiet his busy mind. But he felt like he was failing. His mind wandered constantly. To his work, his relationships, his worries, his plans. He couldn't seem to stay present for more than a few seconds at a time. Frustrated and discouraged, he went to his teacher one afternoon. The teacher was sitting in the garden, simply watching birds flit through the branches of a plum tree. "Master," the student said, sitting down beside him with a sigh, "I can't do it. I try to be present, but my mind is always somewhere else. When I'm meditating, I'm thinking about my work. When I'm working, I'm thinking I should be meditating. When I'm eating, I'm planning what to do next. I'm never actually where I am. I feel like I'm missing my own life." The teacher was quiet for a moment, still watching the birds. Then he turned to his student and asked a simple, piercing question, "Where are you right now?" The student blinked, confused by the seeming obviousness of the question. "I'm here, Master. In the garden with you. And your mind?" The teacher asked gently. "Where is it?" The student paused, turning his attention inward. "It's thinking about what I'm going to say next," he admitted. "And worrying about whether I'm answering correctly. And feeling frustrated that I can't just be present. It's a mess." "So, you are not here at all," the teacher said. There was no judgment in his voice, only a kind, clear seeing. "Your body is here in the garden, but your awareness, is somewhere else entirely. In the future, in thoughts about yourself, in stories about your own inadequacy at this practice." The student nodded, feeling the undeniable truth of it. "Here is what I want you to understand," the teacher said, turning to face him fully. "Every time your mind wanders, and it will wander, that is what minds do, you have a choice. You can stay lost in the thoughts, living in the past or the future. Or you can notice you've wandered, and come back. Right here. Right now. To this breath. To this moment. That returning, that is the practice." He gestured to the birds in the tree. "Watch them for a moment," he said. The student turned his attention to the birds. They were hopping from branch to branch, completely absorbed, utterly present. Not worried about the nest they built last year. Not anxious about where they'll find food tomorrow. Just here. Doing what needs to be done in this moment. Fully present with life as it is. This, the teacher said softly, is what humans have forgotten. How to be where we are. The student watched the birds, and slowly, without effort, his mind began to settle into the watching. The sounds of the garden grew clearer, the rustle of leaves, the distant trickle of the stream, the rhythm of his own breathing. For just a few moments, he wasn't anywhere else. He was here. Fully, completely here. There, the teacher said, noticing the shift. That's it. You just touched the present moment. It's not a special state. It's just being here. If you can do it once, you can do it again. And again. And again. Until being present becomes more natural, more like home, than being lost. This is the practice the Buddha taught. Not achieving some perfect, unbroken state of constant presence, that is not possible for a human mind. But simply returning. Again and again. Bringing yourself back from wherever your mind has wandered off to, back to where life actually is, here, now. The Buddha said it clearly, do not dwell on the past, do not dream of the future, concentrate the mind on the present moment. He wasn't saying, don't learn from the past, or don't plan responsibly for the future. Both have their practical place. He was saying, don't live there. Don't abandon the only moment you actually have in favor of moments that exist only as thoughts in your mind. Because here is the profound truth, past and future are not wrong, but they are not real in the way this present moment is real. They are mental constructs, thoughts happening now. And when you are lost in those thoughts, you are essentially living in an imaginary world, while actual, vivid, real life unfolds around you, unnoticed. The liberation the Buddha pointed to happens in the present moment. Not because the present moment is always pleasant, it isn't. But because in the present moment, without the story, you can meet what is with awareness instead of blind reactivity. In the present moment, you can respond to life from choice, not from conditioned habit. In the present moment, you have access to clarity, to peace, to the stillness that exists beneath the chatter of thought. So, how do you practice this? Start simple. Right now, as you're listening, bring your full attention to your breath for just 3 cycles. Don't change it. Just notice it. The cool air entering, the warm air leaving. This breath is happening right now. It is your most reliable, always available doorway back to the present moment. Throughout your day, create these micro moments of return. When you're eating, actually taste your food. Notice the texture, the temperature, the flavors unfolding. How often do we eat an entire meal without really tasting a single bite because our mind is elsewhere? When you're with someone, practice being fully there. Not formulating your response while they're still talking. Not checking your phone. Just listening. Present, here, with this person in this unique moment. The Buddha taught a formal practice called the 4 foundations of mindfulness: mindfulness of body, of feelings, of mind, and of mental objects or dharmas. But at its core, it is all the same practice, bringing clear, non-judgmental awareness to what is actually happening, right now. Mindfulness of body, noticing sensations, breath, posture, movement as they occur. Mindfulness of feelings, recognizing the pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral tone in an experience, without getting swept away by it. Mindfulness of mind, observing the current state of your mind, is it scattered or calm, anxious or peaceful, without buying into the story of why. Mindfulness of dharmas, seeing the patterns, the teachings, the truths of how things are, in your direct, present moment experience. All of this happens here, now. Never in the past. Never in the future. Always in this moment. And here is what's beautiful, the present moment is always available. No matter how lost you've been, no matter how far your mind has wandered into regret or worry, you can always come back. Right now. This breath. Here. So, take a moment now and just be present. Not thinking about being present, but actually being it. Feel your body where it's supported by the chair or the floor. Hear the sounds around you without immediately naming or judging them. Notice that you are alive, right here, right now. This moment. This is your life. Not the life you remember. Not the life you're planning. This one. And it is enough. It is more than enough, it is everything. When you truly begin to understand this, when you start to live from this awareness more and more, something remarkable happens. You start to see other people differently, too. You start to recognize that everyone, just like you, is struggling and seeking in their own way. And that recognition opens the door to something the Buddha considered absolutely essential, compassion. Which brings us to perhaps one of the most transformative teachings of all. Understanding the universal nature of suffering and our shared, deep longing for peace. Think of someone who has hurt you. Someone who has been difficult, unkind, maybe even cruel. Someone whose behavior you simply cannot understand. Now, imagine this. What if that person was acting that way because they were in pain? Not as an excuse, pain does not excuse harmful actions, but as an explanation. What if, beneath their angry words, their cold distance, their hurtful actions, there was a suffering they did not know how to handle, a wound they did not know how to heal? This is one of the most challenging, and ultimately most transformative, teachings the Buddha offered. He taught that every single being, without exception, is trying to avoid suffering and find some sense of peace, safety, or happiness. Every single one. The person who cut you off in traffic, who snapped at you at work, who betrayed your trust, who can't seem to show up in the way you need, they are all, in their own confused and often unskillful way, doing the best they know how to do with the level of understanding, awareness, and emotional capacity they have in that moment. They are trying to escape their own pain. Most of the time, they are doing it badly. Most of the time, their attempts to avoid their own suffering end up creating suffering for others. But the fundamental motivation, buried beneath the unskillful action, is the same one you have, the wish to be free from hurt, to feel okay. This understanding is the foundation of what Buddhism calls karuna, compassion. Not the superficial, thoughts and prayers, kind of compassion, but a deep, clear-seeing recognition of the truth that all beings share the same fundamental experience. We all know what it is to hurt. We all want that hurt to stop. The Buddha's first noble truth, that life involves dukkha, dissatisfaction, suffering, doesn't just apply to you. It applies to everyone. The person who seems to have it all together is suffering in ways you can't see. The person who hurt you is suffering, that is often the very fuel for their hurtful behavior. The stranger on the street, the friend, the family member, the person you'll never meet. All of them know the taste of dukkha. All of them are trying, in their own way, to find their path through it. This isn't a romantic idea or wishful thinking. It is, when you look deeply, simply true. And when you begin to see this truth clearly, something profound shifts in how you relate to others. You stop taking things so personally. You start recognizing that most of the time, people's behavior has very little to do with you, and everything to do with their own internal struggle, their own history, their own pain. You develop what the Buddha called the mind of great compassion, the ability to hold the suffering of others with understanding, even when their suffering has caused you harm. Let me be very clear about something important here. Compassion does not mean letting people hurt you. It does not mean staying in harmful situations or excusing bad behavior. Healthy boundaries are essential. Protecting your own well-being is wise and necessary. Compassion means understanding the suffering behind the behavior, without taking on that suffering as your own, and without allowing the harmful behavior to continue affecting you. It is about seeing with clarity, not about being a doormat. There is a story that illuminates this balance beautifully. A young woman came to see a teacher, carrying years of heavy resentment toward her father. He had been cold, critical, emotionally distant throughout her childhood. No matter what she achieved, it was never enough. No matter how hard she tried to earn his approval, he remained unmoved, closed off. "I can't forgive him," she told the teacher, tears streaming down her face. "He stole my childhood. He made me feel worthless, invisible. How am I supposed to just let that go? How can I possibly have compassion for him?" The teacher listened with complete, unwavering attention, letting the woman's pain fill the space between them. Then she asked, gently, "Do you know your father's story?" "What do you mean?" the woman asked, confused. "His childhood," the teacher said. "The people who raised him. The pain he experienced long before you were even born." The woman shook her head. "He never talked about it. He never talked about anything real, anything emotional." The teacher nodded slowly. "That is part of the story, right there," she said. Someone taught him not to talk about real things. Someone taught him that emotions were dangerous, that vulnerability was weakness. Someone hurt him, in ways he may not even remember consciously, in ways that made him lock his heart away for protection. The woman sat very still, something beginning to shift in her understanding. "I am not asking you to excuse what he did," the teacher continued. "Your pain is real. The harm he caused is real. But beneath his coldness, his distance, his criticism, there was suffering. He was likely doing to you what was done to him, not because he didn't love you, but because he didn't know how to love in any other way. He was passing on the only template he had." She paused, letting those words settle in the quiet room. "Think about it this way," the teacher said. "If someone is drowning, and in their panic, they push you underwater in a frantic attempt to climb to air, they are not evil. They are terrified, desperate. The pushing is still harmful, and you absolutely need to get away, to get to safety, to protect your own ability to breathe. But understanding that they were drowning changes how you hold the experience in your heart. It doesn't erase the harm, but it can drain some of the poison of personal malice from the memory. Your father was drowning in his own suffering his whole life. He never learned to swim. And in his panic, in his desperate, flailing attempts to stay afloat, he pushed you down. Not because you deserved it. Not because he wanted to hurt you. But because he was drowning, and didn't know what else to do. Tears continued to fall, but the woman's face had softened from hard anger to a sorrow that included more than just her own pain. What pain was he carrying? She whispered, almost to herself. I don't know, the teacher said honestly. But it was heavy enough to close his heart to his own child. Can you imagine that level of pain? Can you imagine being so hurt, so armored, so afraid yourself, that you become unable to show love, even to the person you love most in the world? The woman closed her eyes, and in that moment, something truly remarkable happened. For the first time in her life, she saw her father not as the powerful, imposing figure who had dominated her childhood with his absence, but as a suffering human being, a scared, wounded boy inside a man's body, doing his utterly inadequate best with profound wounds he had never healed. The resentment didn't disappear in that instant. Real healing doesn't work that way. But it began to transform. It began to make space for something else. For understanding, for a sorrow that was bigger than her own, for the beginnings of a compassion that could set her free. This is what the Buddha meant when he taught compassion. He said, just as a mother would protect her only child with her life, even so, cultivate a boundless heart towards all beings. He said, radiate boundless love towards the entire world. This compassion is based on the clear seeing of a shared condition. Just as I wish to be free from suffering and fear, just as I wish to be at peace, so do all beings. Every person you meet, from the most beloved to the most difficult, is carrying this same, fundamental wish. They're just going about fulfilling it in different ways, some wise, some unskillful, some deeply destructive. But the underlying wish is universal. When you truly understand this, you can't hate in quite the same way anymore. You can still set boundaries. You can still protect yourself. You can still say, this behavior is not acceptable. You can still walk away from toxic situations. But underneath those necessary, wise actions, there can be a recognition, this person is suffering, too. This doesn't make you weak or passive. In fact, it makes you clearer, stronger, because when you are not completely caught up in reactive anger, blame, or fear, you can respond to situations with more wisdom, with more discernment about what is actually needed. Buddhism teaches a formal practice called metta, or loving-kindness meditation, that helps to cultivate this understanding in a systematic way. It's simple, but profoundly effective. You start by offering kind wishes to yourself. May I be safe. May I be healthy. May I be at peace. May I live with ease. Then, you extend those same, genuine wishes to someone you love easily. May you be safe. May you be healthy. May you be at peace. Then, And this is where the practice deepens. You extend them to a neutral person, someone you neither like nor dislike. Then, to someone you have difficulty with. And eventually, to all beings, everywhere, without exception, may all beings be safe. May all beings be healthy. May all beings be at peace. May all beings live with ease. The practice isn't about forcing yourself to feel warm, fuzzy love for someone who has caused you harm. That's often not possible, and trying to force it creates inner conflict. It's about recognizing the shared truth: this being, like me, wishes to be free from suffering. This being, like me, deserves peace, even if they are acting in ways that are the very opposite of peaceful. You are planting seeds of a different understanding in your heart. Over time, these seeds change your internal landscape. You start to see people with more clarity and less automatic judgment. You recognize suffering in its many disguises: anger, arrogance, coldness, cruelty, and you understand that these are often just clumsy, painful attempts to protect a wounded heart, to feel in control, to feel safe. Now, here is something crucial: having compassion does not mean allowing harm to continue. If someone is treating you badly, compassion might look like setting a firm, clear boundary from a place of calm strength. I understand you are hurting, but I cannot allow this behavior to affect me anymore. I wish you well, but I need to protect my peace. Compassion isn't about being a doormat, it's about seeing clearly and responding with wisdom instead of reactive emotion. Sometimes, the most compassionate thing you can do for yourself and for another person is to walk away from a dynamic that is causing mutual harm. You can wish them well from a distance while fiercely protecting your own inner sanctuary. Understanding why someone acts a certain way does not mean you have to accept being treated that way. You can hold both truths at once: they are suffering, and I deserve to be treated with respect. Their suffering explains, but does not excuse. This is mature compassion. Compassionate to others, and fiercely, lovingly compassionate to yourself. So, take a moment now. Think of someone who has been difficult in your life. Instead of focusing solely on what they did, or how it made you feel, ask yourself, with curiosity, what pain might they be carrying? What fear, what loss, what unhealed wound might be driving their behavior? This reflection doesn't erase what happened. It doesn't make it okay. But it might help you see them, and the situation, with more clarity and less personal anguish. When you recognize that everyone, without exception, is fighting a hard battle you know nothing about, your heart naturally softens. Not in a way that makes you vulnerable to harm, but in a way that makes you wiser, kinder, and more free. Because when you stop taking everyone's behavior as a personal commentary on your worth, and start recognizing the universal struggle beneath it, you lighten your own burden tremendously. You free up energy previously spent on resentment and blame, and that energy becomes available for healing, for creativity, for peace. And this understanding naturally leads to the next, vital question. If everyone is struggling in their own way, who, then, is responsible for your inner peace? Who tends the garden of your own mind? That is what we will explore next, the practice of taking full, empowered responsibility for your own mental and emotional landscape. Something happens that upsets you. Someone says something thoughtless. A situation doesn't go your way. You make a mistake. And immediately, almost reflexively, your mind launches into a familiar pattern: blame. They made me angry. This situation is making me anxious. Life is making me miserable. We do this automatically, don't we? We point to external circumstances, to other people, and we say, that is the reason I feel this way. That person, that event, that reality, they are responsible for my inner state. And here is where Buddhism offers something that can feel uncomfortable at first, but is ultimately deeply liberating. You are not to blame for every thought or feeling that arises. Many mental and emotional patterns are conditioned, inherited, habitual, arising from causes and conditions you didn't choose. But, you are responsible for what you do with those thoughts and feelings once you become aware of them. There is a crucial, life-changing difference between blame and responsibility. Blame says, it's all my fault. I'm bad. I should be ashamed. That is not helpful, and it is not what the Buddha taught. Responsibility says, this is my mind. These are my present moment experiences. And I have agency, I have the ability to choose, in how I relate to them. That is empowering. No one else can enter your mind and rearrange your thoughts for you. No one else can make you peaceful or make you suffer, though they can certainly create conditions that make peace or suffering more likely. But ultimately, your internal experience is your domain. You are the guardian at the gate. This teaching might feel harsh initially. It can sound like you're being told, your suffering is your own fault. But that is a misinterpretation. What it truly means is this: you have more power and freedom than you might believe. In Buddhism, there is a practice called right effort, samma vayama in Pali, and it is one of the steps on the Noble Eightfold Path. Right effort isn't about straining, forcing, or white-knuckling your way through life. It's about tending your mind with wise and consistent care. The Buddha described 4 aspects of right effort. 1. To prevent unwholesome mental states from arising. 2. To abandon unwholesome mental states that have already arisen. 3. To cultivate wholesome mental states that have not yet arisen. 4. To maintain and perfect wholesome mental states that have already arisen. Let's unpack this. First, preventing unwholesome states means recognizing the conditions that tend to lead you into suffering, certain situations, certain types of engagement, certain thought patterns, and being mindful about how you engage with those conditions. It's proactive care. Second, abandoning unwholesome states means when you notice you're caught in anger, jealousy, or harsh self-criticism, you have the capacity to recognize it and let it go, rather than feeding it with more attention and story. Third, cultivating wholesome states means actively, intentionally developing peace, compassion, clarity, contentment, not waiting for them to arise by accident, but nurturing them like precious seeds. Fourth, maintaining wholesome states means when you find yourself in a state of calm or kindness, you can choose to stay there, to protect it, to let it deepen. None of this is about controlling your thoughts. You can't do that. Trying to control thoughts is like trying to smooth waves with a flat iron, it just creates more agitation. It's about becoming aware of your thoughts and choosing how to respond to them. You are not the author of every thought that pops into your head. But you are the guardian who decides which thoughts to invite in for tea, which to acknowledge and let pass by, and which to actively cultivate and water. Let me share a teaching that makes this distinction beautifully clear. A student came to his teacher, deeply troubled by intrusive, dark thoughts, anxious thoughts, angry thoughts, thoughts he felt ashamed of even having. "Master," he said, his face etched with worry, "I must be a terrible person. These horrible thoughts keep coming into my mind, and I don't want them there. I try to push them away, but they just come back stronger. What is wrong with me?" The teacher listened, then took the student outside. It was a day of scattered clouds, some white and fluffy, some dark and heavy, all drifting lazily across a vast blue sky. The teacher pointed upward. "Tell me," he said, "is the sky responsible for the clouds that pass through it?" The student looked up, confused. "No, Master. The sky is just the sky. The clouds come and go on their own. The sky doesn't create them." "Exactly," the teacher said. "Your mind is like the sky. Thoughts are like clouds. They arise due to various conditions: your past, your mood, what you ate, what you read. They pass through. They change shape. They dissolve. Some are light and pleasant. Some are dark and troubling. But you are not your thoughts, any more than the sky is the clouds." The student felt something ease in his chest, a tightness he hadn't even fully recognized beginning to loosen. "The problem," the teacher continued, "is not that clouds appear. That's natural. That's what happens in a sky. The problem is when you see a dark cloud and you say, 'This cloud is mine. This cloud defines me. I must keep it. I must analyze it. I must build a house under it and live there.'" He paused, letting the student absorb the image. A thought appears. That's like a cloud arriving. You can't always control which clouds the wind brings. But you can choose whether to grasp that thought, to ruminate on it, to build a whole identity around it, or to simply observe it. "Ah, there's a worried thought," and let it pass, like a cloud drifting across the vast space of awareness. "But what if the thought keeps coming back?" the student asked, the old worry creeping in. "Then it keeps coming back," the teacher said simply. "But each time, you have the same choice. Do I grab onto this thought and make it the center of my story? Or do I acknowledge its presence, hello again, worry, and let it pass again, without building a home for it?" He smiled gently. "You are not a bad person for having difficult thoughts. You are a human being with a human mind. Your practice is not to control what thoughts arise, but to become wise about how you relate to them. That is what it means to be the guardian of your mind, not its prisoner. This is the heart of what the Buddha meant when he said, 'The mind is everything. What you think, you become.' He wasn't saying that random, fleeting thoughts magically make you a bad or good person. He was pointing to the powerful process of habituation, the way that thoughts you consistently engage with, believe in, and act upon, gradually shape your character, your attitudes, your very being. If you habitually entertain thoughts of resentment, feeding them with attention, replaying grievances, building elaborate internal justifications for your anger, you are, through that repeated choice, training yourself to be a resentful person. If you habitually notice thoughts of resentment but don't grab onto them, don't make them your identity, don't let them dictate your actions, then those thoughts lose their power to shape who you are becoming. They are just weather passing through. This is mental responsibility without guilt. This is being the guardian without being the harsh, punishing judge. So, how do you practice this in your actual life? Start with simple awareness. What meditation teachers often call noting or witnessing. When a thought arises, instead of immediately believing it, getting lost in it, or reacting to it, just pause and quietly name it to yourself. Worrying, planning, judging, remembering. You're not trying to stop the thought or change it. You are just recognizing it for what it is, a mental event. A cloud in the sky of your mind. This small, gentle act of naming creates a critical space between you and the thought. And in that space, your freedom of choice resides. The next step is recognizing that you do not have to obey every thought that appears. Just because a thought says, "You're not good enough," doesn't mean it's true, and it doesn't mean you have to believe it or act from that belief. Just because a thought says, "You should worry about this all day," doesn't mean you have to follow that instruction. Thoughts are not commands. They are suggestions, often old, worn-out suggestions from past conditioning. And you get to decide which suggestions to listen to, and which to let go. This practice of creating space between stimulus and response is one of the most transformative aspects of Buddhist training. Something happens, a criticism, a setback, a disappointment, the stimulus. Immediately, a thought arises, "This is terrible. I can't handle this. They're attacking me," the automatic reaction. In that instant, in the gap between the stimulus and your full-blown reaction, there is a choice point. With mindfulness, you can notice the thought without immediately acting on it. You can pause. You can take a breath. You can ask, "Is this thought helpful? Is it true? Is this the person I want to be in this moment?" That pause, that moment of mindfulness, is where your freedom lives. That is what it means to be the guardian of your mind. Think of mental hygiene the way you think of physical hygiene. You brush your teeth not once, but every day, because you know that consistent, daily care prevents bigger problems. Your mind needs the same kind of consistent, gentle tending. This might mean a daily meditation practice where you train that muscle of watching thoughts without getting swept away. It might mean regular check-ins with yourself. What have I been feeding my mind today? What seeds have I been watering with my attention? It might mean being more conscious about what you consume, not just food, but media, conversations, the information you allow into your awareness, because all of it plants seeds in the fertile soil of your mind. The Buddha taught that an untrained mind creates suffering for itself. It's like a wild horse that runs wherever its impulses take it, often straight into danger. But a trained mind, not a controlled mind, but a trained mind, familiar with its own patterns, becomes your greatest ally, your most trustworthy friend. A trained mind can experience difficult thoughts and not be destroyed by them. It can notice the powerful impulse to react in anger or fear, and choose not to. It can watch suffering arise and know, this, too, is changing. I don't have to make it solid and permanent by fueling it with my full attention. This is why the Buddha emphasized right effort as part of the path. It is not optional. It is essential. You are the one who will live with your mind every single moment of your life. No one else can tend it for you. So, take a moment now. Just breathe. Notice what thoughts are present right now. Don't judge them. Don't try to change them. Just notice. Are they planning thoughts? Judging thoughts? Peaceful thoughts? Wandering thoughts? And now, notice this, you are not those thoughts. You are the awareness that is witnessing them. That awareness, that silent, knowing presence. That is who you actually are. Being the guardian of your mind doesn't mean achieving a perfect, thought-free state. It means developing the wisdom to recognize that you have agency in how you relate to your internal experience. It means understanding that while you can't control what thoughts arise, you can absolutely influence what thoughts you cultivate, what mental patterns you strengthen, what inner states you choose to live from. And this practice of wise guardianship brings us to something beautiful. When you learn to tend your mind with wisdom and gentleness, you naturally begin to notice what is already there, beneath the chaos of thought, a fundamental quality of awareness that is already whole, already okay, already at peace. And you discover that consciously cultivating gratitude for the simple fact of being alive opens you to that peace in profound and lasting ways. That's where we're heading next. We move through entire days, weeks, even years, without really noticing what is already here, supporting us. The morning light on the wall. The warmth of water in the shower. The incredible fact that we woke up at all. We take it all for granted, these basic, miraculous conditions of existence, breath, awareness, the capacity to see, hear, feel, think, love. We barely register them because they're always there. They seem so ordinary, so constant, until they're not. And then, in their absence or threatened loss, we realize with a shock what we had overlooked. We realize that what seemed mundane was actually extraordinary the whole time. This teaching is about learning to see that extraordinariness before it's too late. It's about developing what Buddhism calls mudita, a word often translated as appreciative joy or sympathetic joy, but which points to a deeper capacity. The ability to recognize and be genuinely glad for what is good, what is present, what is supporting your life right now. Mudita is one of the 4 Brahma Viharas, the divine abodes, or sublime states, of the heart that Buddhism encourages us to cultivate, alongside loving kindness, metta, compassion, karuna, and equanimity, upekkha. Appreciative joy holds a special place as the antidote to envy and to taking life for granted. It is the practice of seeing clearly what is here, what is working, what is holding you up, even when other things are falling apart. In traditional Buddhist reflection, there is a contemplation called the precious human birth. The point is to recognize how rare and phenomenally valuable it is to have the conditions necessary for spiritual awakening, for practicing the Dharma. To hear and practice these teachings, you need to be born in a time and place where they are available. You need the mental capacity to understand them. You need enough basic freedom from immediate, life-threatening struggle to be able to pause and reflect. You need to have encountered these ideas somehow, through a teacher, a book, a video, a moment of insight. None of this is guaranteed. In the vast scope of possible existences, it is extremely rare. Most beings do not have access to teachings about freedom from suffering. Most do not have the leisure, safety, or capacity to contemplate their own minds. Most are caught in circumstances of such acute difficulty that inner practice feels like a distant dream. But you are here. You have this access. You have this capacity. That is not something to feel guilty about, nor is it something to take lightly. It is something to appreciate deeply, because appreciation for these conditions naturally leads to using them well, to not wasting this precious opportunity, to not sleepwalking through a life that is already offering you what you need to wake up. The Buddha also emphasized a quality called santuthi, contentment. Not complacency, not settling for less than you deserve or need, but a profound satisfaction with what is, even while working skillfully toward what could be. This teaching isn't about denying pain or pretending everything is fine when it's not. That would be spiritual bypassing, and the Buddha was a radical realist, far too honest for that. It's about recognizing that even in the midst of difficulty, there are things that remain. There are conditions still supporting you. There is still something to appreciate. Not as a way to ignore suffering, but as a way to see the whole picture clearly, to balance the mind so it doesn't fall into the abyss of only seeing what's wrong. A monk and his student were walking through the mountains on a long pilgrimage. They'd been traveling for many days, and the student was exhausted, hungry, footsore, and increasingly irritable. Everything was wrong. The path was too steep. The weather was too cold. They should have brought more food. His feet hurt. His back ached. His mind was a constant, low-grade complaint. After hours of listening to this, the monks stopped walking. They were on a high ridge with a breathtaking view, mountains rolling into the distance like frozen waves, an endless sky, a clean, cold wind carrying the scent of pine. "Sit with me," the monk said gently, lowering himself onto a flat rock. The student sat, still frowning, still wrapped in his misery. "Look around," the monk said. "Tell me what you see." "I see mountains," the student said flatly. "I see the long path we still have to walk. I see how far we are from any shelter or warm food. I see my blisters." The monk nodded slowly, his own eyes soft as they scanned the immense landscape. "I see something different," he said after a while. "I see that we have air in our lungs. Clear, cold, clean air, filling us with life with every breath we take." He paused, letting that sink in. "I see that we have sky above us. Not a roof, not walls, but infinite, open space that no one owns and everyone shares." Another pause. "I see that we have earth beneath us, solid and reliable, holding us up with every step we take. I see that our bodies, though tired and sore, are still able to walk, to carry us forward on this journey. I see that we have eyes to witness this majestic beauty, ears to hear the wind singing in the pines, skin to feel the cold bite of the air, which means we are alive. We are not numb. We are feeling. The student looked at his teacher, something in his hard expression beginning to soften, like ice melting under a sudden sun. We have food in our packs, the monk continued, even if it is simple and not much. We have each other's company. We have the teachings in our minds and hearts that give this difficult journey its deepest meaning. And we have this moment. Right here. Right now. This moment contains everything we actually need to be at peace. He turned to look at his student directly. I am not saying the path isn't steep, or that your feet don't hurt. Those things are true. But they are not the whole truth. The whole truth includes all of this. He gestured to the sky, the mountains, their own breathing bodies. And when you learn to see the whole truth, suffering doesn't magically disappear, but it stops defining your entire experience. It becomes part of a larger picture. A picture that also contains support, beauty, and life itself. The student sat quietly for a long time, tears starting to form, not from self-pity now, but from a sudden, overwhelming sense of presence. I've been so focused on what's hard, he whispered, that I forgot to see what's here. That's what we all do, the monk said, his voice gentle as the wind. We forget. This practice, this path, is about remembering. This is what the Buddha pointed to when he taught about appreciative joy. He is said to have told his monks, let us rise up and be thankful, for if we didn't learn a lot today, at least we learned a little, and if we didn't learn a little, at least we didn't get sick, and if we got sick, at least we didn't die, so let us all be thankful. It's a teaching about perspective, about training the mind to recognize that there is always something, some condition, some support, some simple grace that is still present, still holding you, still worthy of your grateful attention. This isn't forced positivity. It's not slapping a happy face sticker on genuine pain. It's seeing clearly, which means seeing all of it, not just the difficult parts that scream for our attention. Buddhist appreciation is also about seeing interdependence clearly. It's about recognizing that your life is supported by a countless, infinite web of conditions. The air you breathe created by trees and oceans. The food you eat grown by farmers, transported by workers. The roads you travel built by laborers. The teachings you hear preserved by generations of practitioners across millennia. The very fact of being alive, conscious, in a universe that somehow allows for this miracle. You're not appreciating these things to get something in return, or to appease some cosmic force. You're appreciating them because they are real. They are present. And not seeing them, taking them utterly for granted, is a form of delusion, a narrowing of your vision that cuts you off from the fullness of your own life. So, start simply. Once a day, pause and notice 3 things that are supporting your life right now. Not necessarily grand things. Basic, fundamental things. I have clean water to drink. I have a safe place to sleep tonight. I have the ability to hear these words. The more specific and immediate, the better. This morning, golden light came through my window and painted a square on the floor, is more powerful than a general. I'm grateful for the sun, because it's immediate, sensory, real. It's what you actually experienced. And here is a key distinction: appreciation without attachment. You're not grasping at these things, not demanding they stay forever, not building your identity or security upon them. You're simply acknowledging them while they're here. Right now, I have breath. Not, I must always have breath, or, I'm terrified of losing my breath. Just, right now, this is here. I see it. I appreciate it. Reflect on the conditions that allow you to practice, to even consider these teachings. Maybe you have time to listen because you have a job that provides stability. Maybe you can focus on inner work because you're not actively fleeing war or famine. Maybe you have access to this wisdom because someone translated ancient texts, because the internet exists, because your life's winding path happened to intersect with these ideas at this time. None of this is your doing alone. You are held up, moment by moment, by a vast, invisible web of causes and conditions, most of which you'll never know about or meet. When you see this clearly, when you really feel how interdependent everything is, a natural, unforced appreciation arises. Not because you're trying to be positive, but because you're seeing accurately. Practice finding the extraordinary in the ordinary. The next time you drink a glass of water, really taste it. Notice the miracle that this clear, simple liquid sustains your life, that it's available, that your body knows exactly what to do with it. The next time you breathe, notice that you don't have to remember to do it. Your body breathes you. Life breathes you, without any conscious effort or control from your thinking mind. These aren't small things we're pretending are big. These are enormous things we've been trained to experience as small, as background noise. Pause for a moment now. Notice what is present right now that you've been overlooking. Maybe it's the simple, profound fact that you are alive to hear these words. Maybe it's that you have a mind capable of contemplating, of wondering, of seeking peace. Maybe it's something as basic as the chair holding you up, the air moving in and out of your lungs, the fact that this day, with all its possibilities and difficulties, happened at all. Touch that feeling of appreciation. Don't immediately jump from it to what's missing or what's wrong. This isn't about denying difficulty, it's about not letting difficulty be the only story you tell. This practice of appreciative joy, cultivated over time, gradually transforms how you experience being alive. You stop waiting for perfect, conflict-free conditions to be at peace, and you start recognizing that even imperfect conditions contain support, contain grace, contain enough to take the next step, the next breath. And when you develop this capacity to see and appreciate what's here, you naturally become less reactive, less desperate, less driven by the fear that you don't have what you need, because you start to see that you do have what you need, right now, to be present, to be aware, to begin. That recognition leads us naturally to the next teaching. The understanding that if you want your life to change, if you want your relationships to heal, if you want the world to become a kinder place, there is only one place that genuine, lasting transformation can begin. And that place is closer than you think. We spend so much of our energy, our frustration, our hope, trying to change what is outside us. If only this person would be different. If only this situation would shift. If only the world would finally align with how it should be. We point outward, constantly, at our circumstances, our relationships, our political landscape, our environment, convinced that fixing what's out there will finally bring us the peace we seek in here. But the Buddha taught something that turns this common logic completely on its head. The only place where authentic, lasting transformation can actually begin is within you. Not because external change doesn't matter, it does. Not because you shouldn't work for justice, for healing, for improvement in the world, you absolutely should. But because every genuine change, every lasting shift, every real contribution you make to the world starts with your own transformation first. This is hard to accept, because it means you can't blame your way out of suffering. You can't point to everyone else who needs to change and say, once they're different, then I'll be okay. The Buddha was uncompromising on this point. He taught that you are the only person you have direct, immediate power to transform. Everyone else is on their own path, making their own choices, living out their own karma. You cannot force anyone to change, no matter how much you love them or how right you think you are. You cannot control circumstances, no matter how hard you try. But you can work with your own mind. You can work with your own heart. You can work with your own responses to life. And here is what is profoundly hopeful about this. When you change yourself, the world around you changes, too. Not because you've magically altered external reality, but because you've altered the person experiencing that reality. And when the experiencer changes, everything they touch, everything they encounter, everything they contribute to, shifts as a result. You change the world by changing your perception of it, and your participation in it. The Buddhist path is entirely focused on this self-transformation, not self-improvement, in the modern sense of becoming more successful, attractive, or impressive, but genuine transformation, the deep, fundamental change that happens when you stop living from conditioned, reactive patterns and start living from awareness, compassion, and wisdom. And this transformation ripples outward in ways you can't always see or measure, but which are undeniably real. When you heal something in yourself. Let's say you work through a deep well of anger and develop patience, you stop contributing that anger to every interaction you have. The people around you no longer encounter your reactivity. They experience something different, your patience, your space, and that affects how they respond, which then affects others they encounter, and so on, in widening circles you may never trace, but which are absolutely happening. When you cultivate a genuine, unshakable peace in your own mind, you bring that peace into rooms, into relationships, into conversations. Not by preaching about peace, not by trying to make others peaceful, but simply by being it. Your presence becomes different. There is tremendous, untapped power in coherence, in becoming the thing you wish to see in the world, rather than just talking about it or demanding it from others. The phrase, "be the change you wish to see in the world," is often attributed to Gandhi, and while the exact wording varies, the principle is deeply Buddhist. You cannot create in the world what you have not first embodied within yourself. You cannot give what you do not have. If you want more compassion in the world, become more compassionate. If you want more patience, develop it in yourself first. If you want more honesty, more kindness, more clarity, more courage, start by cultivating those qualities internally and then living them, consistently, in your small, daily choices. This isn't about perfection. You won't master every quality overnight, and you'll still make mistakes. But the direction matters. The commitment to working on yourself, rather than endlessly trying to fix, correct, or control everyone else, that is the path. There's a story that captures this teaching perfectly. A young man was constantly frustrated and angry with his family. His parents were critical. His siblings were competitive. Family gatherings left him feeling exhausted, judged, and resentful. He went to see a teacher known for her wisdom about relationships and conflict. "They make me so angry," he told her. "No matter what I do, it's never enough. They're always finding fault, always comparing, always making me feel small and defensive. How do I make them change? How do I get them to see what they're doing?" The teacher listened quietly. Then she stood up and beckoned him to follow her to a small, quiet room at the back of her house. In the room, there was only one piece of furniture, a full-length mirror leaning against the wall. "Stand here," she said, positioning him directly in front of the mirror. "What do you see?" "I see myself," he said, confused by the question. "Look more closely," she said. "What expression is on your face right now?" He looked. His reflection showed a man with a tight jaw, hard eyes, shoulders hunched slightly forward in a defensive posture. "I see someone who's angry," he admitted. "Someone who's braced for a fight." "Now," the teacher said gently, "imagine your family is standing here, looking at this mirror with you. What do they see?" He was quiet for a long moment, beginning to understand. "They see someone who's already defensive before they even speak," he said slowly. "Someone who's already closed off, already expecting an attack. Someone who's not really open to them." "Exactly," the teacher said. "And how do people typically respond to someone who is defensive, closed, and braced for conflict?" "They become defensive too," he whispered. "Or they attack the weakness they sense. Or they just shut down. It doesn't make for a good conversation." The teacher nodded. "You have been so focused on wanting them to change, to be kinder, more accepting, less critical, that you haven't looked at what you are bringing into the room. You arrive already wounded, already angry, already convinced they will hurt you. And that very expectation, that energy you carry, creates the very dynamic you are complaining about. It invites the response you fear." She touched the surface of the mirror gently. "This is how life works," she said. "What you are, you meet. If you bring defensiveness, you will encounter defensiveness. If you bring judgment, you will experience judgment, often because you are perceiving it everywhere, even where it isn't. But if you change what is here," she said, touching his chest over his heart, "what you meet out there changes, too. Not because they've magically become different people, but because you have changed the equation. You have changed your half of the dance. So, I'm supposed to just accept how they treat me?" he asked, a flash of the old anger returning. "No," she said firmly. "I am not talking about acceptance or approval of bad behavior. I am talking about transformation. You cannot control whether they change. But you can absolutely change how you show up. What energy you bring. how you listen, how you respond. And when you change those things, the entire dynamic shifts. Not because you've controlled them, but because you've stopped feeding the old, painful pattern. You've changed your steps in the dance. She gestured to the mirror again. Right now, you are asking the reflection in the mirror to smile while you are frowning. It doesn't work that way. You have to smile first. Change yourself, and watch what happens to the reflection. This is the heart of what the Buddha taught about transformation. He said it explicitly, you yourselves must strive. The Buddhas only point the way. No teacher, no teaching, no external force can do your inner work for you. The Buddha himself, the most awakened teacher in the tradition, could not make anyone else awaken. He could only point, guide, offer the map, share the teachings. Each person had to walk the path themselves, do the practice themselves, realize the truth for themselves. This is both sobering and incredibly empowering. Sobering, because you cannot outsource your transformation. You can't pay someone to meditate for you, to develop compassion for you, to heal your wounds for you. The work is yours, and yours alone. But empowering, because it means you are not waiting for permission, for perfect conditions, or for someone else to change first. You can start right now, exactly where you are, with whatever mind and heart you have in this moment. So, where do you begin? Start with the most honest, courageous question you can ask yourself: what is my part in this? Not, what's wrong with everyone else? You probably know that list by heart. But, what am I contributing to this situation, this relationship, this recurring pattern? This doesn't mean blaming yourself for everything. Some things genuinely are not your fault. But even in situations where others have harmed you, you still have agency over how you carry that harm, how you respond to it now, how you let it shape you moving forward. Maybe your part is the bitter story you've been telling yourself about it for years. Maybe it's the way you shut down and build walls instead of communicating. Maybe it's the grudge you're holding that's poisoning you far more than it affects the person who wronged you. Identifying your part isn't about shame. It's about power. Because the parts that are yours are the only parts you can actually change. Another place to start. Choose one small thing in yourself to heal or transform. Maybe it's a habit of harsh, critical self-talk. Work on that. Every time you catch yourself being cruel internally, pause and choose a gentler, truer word. That small, internal change will ripple through everything: your confidence, your relationships, your capacity to be kind to others. Maybe you're carrying resentment from a past event. Work on that, not for the other person's sake, but for yours. The weight of that resentment affects how you move through the world, how open you can be to new experiences, how much peace you can access. Inner healing isn't selfish. It is one of the greatest contributions you can make to the world. Because a healed person doesn't unconsciously spread their wounds to others. A healed person has something whole, something healthy, to offer. And here is something beautiful about this path. Small changes in your internal landscape create disproportionate ripples in your external world. You shift from automatic blame to curiosity in one difficult conversation, and suddenly that conversation goes somewhere new, somewhere constructive. You choose patience instead of snapping in irritation in one fraught moment, and that moment becomes a turning point in a relationship. You meet your own anxiety with compassion instead of resistance, and you find you can sit with a friend in their anxiety without needing to fix it. None of these are grand, dramatic gestures. They are small, internal shifts. But they change everything, because they change who you are. And who you are is what you bring to every single encounter, every situation, every moment of your life. The Buddhist teaching isn't that you are broken and need fixing. It's that you have the capacity for awakening, for freedom, for peace, for boundless compassion, and that capacity is accessed through persistent, patient, compassionate work with your own mind and heart. So, take a moment now. Instead of thinking first about what needs to change out there in your life, ask, what is one thing I could transform internally? What pattern could I interrupt? What habitual reaction could I soften? What old wound could I begin to heal with kindness? And what would one small, practical step in that direction look like today? Because transformation doesn't happen in one grand, sweeping gesture. It happens in moments of conscious choice, repeated over and over, until those choices become your new way of being. The world needs your transformation. Not your perfection. Not your polished performance. But your genuine, ongoing commitment to becoming more awake, more compassionate, more free. And that commitment brings us to the final teaching, perhaps the most important one of all. Because at the end of your life, at the end of every spiritual path, you will discover this ultimate truth: no one can walk the path for you. The Buddha himself can only point the way. The rest is up to you. These were among the last words the Buddha spoke before he died. After 45 years of teaching, after guiding countless disciples toward awakening, after establishing a path that would endure for millennia, he lay down between two sal trees and gathered his disciples around him one final time. They were devastated, terrified of losing their teacher, their guide, their refuge. Who will guide us now, they thought. Who will answer our questions? How will we find our way without his light? And in that moment of collective grief and fear, the Buddha offered his ultimate, empowering teaching: be a lamp unto yourselves. Be your own refuge. Seek no outside refuge. Hold fast to the truth as a lamp. Hold fast to the truth as a refuge. Not, follow me forever. Not, you will be lost without me. Not, cling to my words as absolute, unchangeable doctrine. Instead, he said, trust what is within you, you have access to the same truth I found. The path is there for you to discover directly, in your own experience. This is perhaps the most liberating, and the most challenging, teaching in all of Buddhism, because it requires something radical, that you stop giving your authority away to external sources and learn to trust your own direct experience of truth. We spend so much of our lives looking outside ourselves for answers. For the perfect teacher who will explain everything. For the right book that will unlock the final mystery. For the correct tradition that will hand us awakening on a silver platter. We want someone else to tell us what's true, what to believe, how to live, where to go. And while teachers, books, and traditions serve a vital purpose, the Buddha himself taught for decades, they are meant to point you back to yourself, not to become a permanent crutch. No teacher, no matter how wise, can meditate for you. They cannot live your life, feel your feelings, or do your inner work. They can share what they've discovered, offer guidance from their journey, show you where to look, but the seeing itself, the realizing, that has to be yours. Think of learning to swim. Someone can explain the mechanics, demonstrate the strokes, even hold you up in the water at first. But eventually, they have to let go. And you have to discover, in your own body, that you can float, that you can move through the water, that this capacity is within you. Spiritual awakening works the same way. At some point, the training wheels come off. You stop endlessly preparing and start actually living what you've learned. You stop collecting teachings like stamps and start embodying wisdom. You stop seeking outside and start seeing inside. This doesn't mean you abandon learning from others or practicing in community. It means your relationship to learning changes. You are no longer an empty vessel waiting to be filled with someone else's knowledge. You are someone developing discernment, testing what you hear against the reality of your own experience, taking what leads to freedom and peace, and letting go of what doesn't, no matter how prestigious the source. The Buddha taught something called Yoniso Manasikara. Wise reflection, wise attention, skillful investigation. It's the capacity to examine teachings with clear awareness, asking, does this align with my direct experience? Does it lead toward liberation, toward less suffering, toward more compassion? Or does it just create more dependency, more confusion, more dogma? This kind of discernment develops through paying close attention, through testing ideas in the laboratory of your actual life, through trusting your innate capacity to recognize truth when you encounter it. There is a story about a monk who struggled with this very question of inner authority. He had been practicing for years, studying different traditions, sitting with various teachers, trying every technique he encountered. But he felt like he was spinning his wheels, getting nowhere. Other students seemed to have profound insights he couldn't access. He felt perpetually lost, like he was missing some crucial, secret key. One day, exhausted and deeply discouraged, he went to see an elder teacher known for her fierce, loving directness. "I've tried everything," he told her. Hours of meditation, studying texts, following precepts, listening to countless Dharma talks. But I don't feel any closer to real understanding. What am I doing wrong? What's the secret I haven't found yet? The teacher studied him for a long, silent moment. Then she stood up, walked to the altar where a single oil lamp was burning steadily, and picked up an unlit lamp from a shelf. She held it out to him. "Light this," she said. He looked around, confused. "With what? Do you have matches? A striker?" "No," she said. "Just light it." "But I can't light it with nothing," he said, frustration creeping into his voice. "I need a flame from somewhere, from that lamp, or from matches, or—" She interrupted him gently. "You keep looking outside yourself for what you think you lack," she said. "The perfect technique. The right teacher. The missing piece of secret knowledge. But what if there is nothing missing? What if you already contain what you are seeking? She set the unlit lamp down and looked at him directly, her eyes holding a deep, unwavering certainty. You think you are the lamp, waiting to be lit by someone else's flame, she said quietly. But you are not. You are the fire itself, temporarily forgetting how to burn. Every teacher, every practice, every teaching you've collected, they're just wind, fanning a flame that never went out. It has been there all along, beneath the doubt, beneath the seeking, beneath the feeling of inadequacy. Something profound shifted in the monk's chest. A deep, resonating click of understanding. All this time, he had been waiting for someone to give him what he already possessed. But how do I access it? He whispered, the fight gone from his voice. Stop performing spirituality, she said, as if you're trying to earn a reward, a grade, an enlightenment certificate. Instead, notice the awareness that is already here, right now. The consciousness that is hearing these words. The knowing that is present in every breath, aware of every sensation, every thought. That awareness doesn't need to be created, achieved, or lit from outside. It only needs to be recognized. It only needs to be trusted. This points to the very heart of the Buddha's final teaching. When he said, "Be a lamp unto yourselves," he wasn't asking you to become something you are not. He was inviting you to recognize what is already, always present beneath all the conditioning, all the doubt, all the layers of not enough. The full teaching says, therefore, Ananda, be a lamp unto yourselves. Be your own refuge. Hold to the truth within yourselves as the only lamp. Let the Dharma be your island, your refuge, but investigate it for yourselves. Notice what he does not say. He does not say, make me your permanent refuge. He does not say, never question these teachings. He does not say, the tradition has all the answers. He points, unwaveringly, toward your own direct access to truth, your own capacity for awakening, your own ability to know what is real. Yes, he also spoke of taking refuge in the Dharma, the teachings, and the Sangha, the community. But these function as supports for your journey, not as replacements for walking it. The Dharma isn't meant to be swallowed whole as blind dogma. It's meant to be tested, questioned, applied to your life, and verified through your own direct experience. The Sangha isn't meant to think for you or dictate your beliefs. It's meant to support your practice, kindly challenge your blind spots, and reflect back what they see, while you maintain sovereignty over your own path. Teachers, as the saying goes, are like fingers pointing at the moon. They show you where to look, but you have to see the moon for yourself. And if you spend all your time studying the finger, venerating the finger, arguing about whose finger points best, you miss the moon entirely. Awakening isn't something that can be transmitted from teacher to student like a package handed over. It's something remembered. You remember what has always been true, beneath the stories, beneath the fear, beneath the belief that you are separate, inadequate, or unprepared. So, what does it mean to practice being your own refuge, your own lamp? Start by trusting your direct experience more than second-hand descriptions of reality. If a teaching, no matter how ancient or authoritative, doesn't lead to more freedom, more clarity, more compassion in your actual life, you don't have to force yourself to believe it. The Buddha himself was explicit about this. He told the Kalamas, "Do not go upon what has been acquired by repeated hearing, nor upon tradition, nor upon rumor, nor upon the consideration, the monk is our teacher. When you know for yourselves, these things are wholesome, blameless, praised by the wise. When undertaken and observed, these things lead to welfare and happiness, then you should abide in them." That is revolutionary trust in personal discernment. Develop the habit of checking in with yourself before automatically seeking external answers. When facing a decision, a difficulty, a confusion, pause. Sit quietly and inquire within, what do I already sense about this? What feels true beneath the noise of fear and old conditioning? What does my body know? What does a moment of silence reveal? You might be surprised by the wisdom that emerges when you create space to listen to yourself. Take the teachings you've heard, like the ones we've explored today, and make them yours through lived experience. Don't just repeat the concepts. Test them. See how they work in the laboratory of your unique life, with your specific challenges, your particular heart. Let borrowed knowledge become embodied wisdom. There is a vast difference between knowing intellectually that everything changes and actually experiencing the truth of impermanence in your body, in your relationships, in your moment-to-moment awareness. The second one, the lived experience, that is genuine understanding. The first is just information. Understand that being your own refuge doesn't mean having perfect certainty or never feeling lost. It means developing trust in your capacity to navigate uncertainty, to sit with not knowing, to take the next step even when the whole path isn't visible. Your inner knowing isn't a blazing spotlight illuminating the entire journey far into the future. It's more like a small, steady candle or an oil lamp, showing you just the next step, and then the next. And that is sufficient. You don't need to see the entire winding road, you just need enough light for the step you're on. And remember, self-reliance in this context doesn't mean isolation. We are interdependent beings in an interconnected world. We learn from each other. We support each other. We reflect truth back to each other. But there's a vital difference between learning from others and surrendering your power to them. Between receiving support and becoming dependent. Between being inspired by someone's insight and believing they possess something you fundamentally lack. You can deeply honor teachers while still honoring your own inner authority. You can practice sincerely in community while still walking your own unique path. You can receive guidance with gratitude while still making your final choices based on your own discernment and your own direct understanding of truth. Right now, in this moment, feel into what is already present. Beneath the thoughts, beneath any doubt, beneath all the seeking, there is an awareness that has been here all along. It is aware of these words right now. It has been aware through every moment of your life, witnessing everything without being any particular thing. It notices thoughts without being those thoughts. It experiences emotions without being those emotions. That witnessing awareness, clear, spacious, peaceful, that is what the Buddha was ultimately pointing to. Not something you need to create, achieve, or discover somewhere distant. Just something to recognize, to trust, and to gradually learn to live from. His final teaching wasn't a burden or an abandonment. It was the ultimate liberation, the final gift. He was saying, you are ready now. You have what is needed. I've shown you where to look, but now comes the part only you can do, seeing for yourself, walking your path, claiming your own freedom. No one can hand you liberation. You have to realize it's already here, within the nature of your own mind. The Buddha knew this. That's why his last words were, in essence, be your own lamp. Trust yourself. Not the small self of ego and fear, but the deeper self, the awareness that's always been present, the wisdom that emerges in stillness, the knowing that exists before thought. That is your refuge. That is your lamp. That is what has been waiting for you to notice it, all along. These 10 teachings we've walked through together are not separate, isolated lessons. They are different facets of the same luminous truth. That freedom from suffering is possible. That peace is your birthright, not a distant reward. That you have the capacity to navigate this human life with wisdom, grace, and an open heart. 1. Everything changes, so, learn to hold life lightly, to appreciate the beauty of the fleeting moment, and to trust the flow of existence. 2. Clinging creates suffering. So, practice loving with open hands, appreciating deeply without demanding permanence. 3. Peace lives within you, so, stop exhausting yourself searching for it in external conditions, and cultivate the inner refuge that is always available. 4. Your mind shapes your experience, so, tend it like a precious garden, planting seeds of kindness, clarity, and peace. 5. This present moment is all you have. So, practice returning to it, again and again, for this is where life is actually lived. 6. Everyone is struggling, so, meet others with compassion, understanding the shared wish for freedom from pain that motivates all beings. 7. You are the guardian of your mind, so, take responsibility for your inner landscape, recognizing the power you have in how you relate to your thoughts and feelings. 8. Appreciate what is here. So, cultivate gratitude for the simple, supporting conditions of your life, and find the extraordinary in the ordinary. 9. Transformation begins with you, so, be the change you wish to see, understanding that healing yourself is the most powerful contribution you can make to the world. 10. Be your own light, so, trust your direct experience, walk your path with courage, and remember that the ultimate refuge, the final teacher, is within you. This is the map. The path is yours to walk. Thank you, deeply, for sharing this time, for listening with such an open and sincere heart. If one of these teachings particularly resonated with you today, I encourage you to take that one and live with it. Practice it. You don't need to master all 10 at once. Live one deeply, and it will gently transform everything else. This has been a journey of over 3 hours, a significant commitment of your time and attention. I honor that. If it feels right, I invite you to share in the comments where you're listening from, or which teaching touched you most. We are a community of seekers, each walking our own path, but doing so together, supporting each other with our shared intention for peace and understanding. And now, as we close, please receive this ancient blessing, offered with a full heart. May you be peaceful. May you be free from suffering. May you find the inner stability that does not depend on anything outside you changing. May you remember, in every moment, that you have everything you need to take the next breath, the next step, the next moment of being fully, courageously present. Wherever you are, whatever you are facing, may you find your way home, to the peace, the wisdom, and the love that have always been within you. Until we meet again, walk gently, be kind to yourself, and trust your own light.